You see, darkness, it only came because we let the fathers, the monsters, we let them move. But now, all we have to do is make a breadsheet.
Festive H in Whack. That's at Whack Nicholson at WHACKNICHOLSON on Twitter. You have been officially called out and you know exactly what that means, so you know what to do, so get to it. I'm not going to waste any time explaining that here, just going to give Festive H in Whack my endorsement for a follow. That's Whack Nicholson, at Whack Nicholson. That's Whack with an H. That's a fake name, too, Whack Nicholson. I, too, have a fake name, as does my guest today. Well, I guess part of her name is fake. I don't believe Quirky is her Christian middle name. And I guess I've already given up the ghost, as the kids say. And that's that. Today's episode is part 2 of my whilin' chit-chat with Rachel Quirky Schenk of the Screen Snark and Infinity podcasts, and also of her Twitch channel, recently affiliated on there, so that's cool. You should go check that out. Also of the previous episode of Breadsheet, which you should listen to, though it's not needed to get what's going on here. I'm Hoss Bossman, and you're listening to my Breadsheets. Today on Breadsheet, we are wrapping up the universe-spanning chat I had with the incredible Rachel Schenk, and I'm going to actually make this a short intro. I said on Twitter that I would make it under 7 minutes, but I don't think anybody paid attention to that, so I will try, but well, let's see what happens. I had an outline for today's episode ready to go, but I decided to save it for the next episode of Breadsheet because it's kind of an evergreen thing, which it's going to be a mini-sode of this podcast. Breadsheet. I had a fun little interaction with a ding-dong. I brought it up last week, a right-winger. And I think it was productive, but I'm going to wait until next week to drop that. Christmas really kind of crept up on me this year, so I don't have any Christmas-specific new content to drop. But I recently unearthed a 10-year-old 20-minute test run my boy Stacy and I did for a podcast idea we had way back in the day. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to play that for y'all. I'm going to send it to him and make sure there's nothing humiliating in there that he doesn't want me to play. But, you know, it'll be a fun thing for Jesus' birthday. Oh, and also, I have a Christmas song. I'll mention that. I'll get to that later. So I'm going to try to make this week's show nice and short and sweet. Stick around for the end when I will play us out of this chit-chat with a real-life K-Max Christmas song. I wrote this Christmas song in 2009 about Santa needing to get a bailout from the U.S. government, being roundly denounced for having arrived at his hearing in a private sleigh. A fun, topical Christmas song. You get it? Because the CEOs and stuff, they arrived in private jets to Washington, and everybody was like, hey, you're trying to get a bailout from the government, and you arrive in a private jet. So it's that, but with a sleigh. The song does get a little dark, though, so content warning. It involves self-harm, and yeah, but that's going to play at the very end of the show, so you can, have plenty of time to tune that out. Also, the very last thing we talk about in this chat is pretty fun and interesting and, dare I say, profound. We may have even been galaxy braining just a pinch. I asked Ms. Schenk, I almost said Mrs. Schenk. I try not to do the Mrs. and Ms. or Mrs. and Miss thing. I know, like, I've heard Joe Rogan say multiple times, one of the many dumb things I've heard him say multiple times and, like, double down on is,
remember when they were trying to get us to use Ms. instead of Mrs. or Miss? Like, that was so stupid. That didn't catch on.
It's like, dude, as far as I know, most people just default to Ms. because it's pretty archaic and dumb to be, like, have your, like, title defined by whether or not you're married. And, you know, I could maybe kind of understand why, you know, that was a thing in the past. But it's, I mean, if you're, like, writing a letter or, you know, addressing somebody and you don't know whether they're married or not, you just guess if they're Mrs. or Miss. Like, just always use Ms. It's, you know, kind of insulting, I would think, to define that. Anyway, so yeah, that's a dumb Joe Roganism. Maybe I'll try to come up with one of those each week, and that'll give me an excuse to make yet another theme song. We'll call it Rogan Dummisms. Okay, I asked Ms. Schenk something I've been thinking a lot about lately and that I want to make a video essay about sometime. So I'll be bringing this up with future guests, but it's just this question of, like, why is everything conservatives create ugly as shit? I know, I'm way oversimplifying. There are lots of examples of decent art created by conservative, maybe even like right-wing folks, maybe even really people with super horrible, like fascist ideas and stuff. None coming to mind at the moment, but I challenge you to argue against the assertion that artists, musicians, comedians, poets, fiction writers, dancers, even like actors and other sort of tangentially creative folks. Is that insulting to actors? To say, actors, you're creative. I think you're artists. Actors are great. Those folks are overwhelmingly on the left. Any, like, even somewhat artistic folks is kind of what I was trying to get at there with the actors thing. Sorry, actors. I love you and respect what you do. So yeah, why is that? Why are creative and artistic folks, like, overwhelmingly on the left? I have my theories, mostly having to do with, like, imagination and empathy, but I encourage you to swish that question around in your head as we work our way toward really trying to wrestle with it. And definitely stick around to the end of the interview to hear the really insightful, interesting answer that Rachel Quirky Schenk had to that question. I would say not to build it up too much, but I really do think it's that interesting, kind of surprising of an answer. I think y'all are going to love this chat even more than you loved the first half. Got some really good feedback on the first half. There's some great stuff here. Ms. Schenk is eternally a delight. And, make sure you go to my YouTube channel. That's Hoss Bossman, or the shortened link, bit.ly/HossTube. Subscribe and hit the bell and binge my videos and like them and comment on them. There is a new clip up with video of an excerpt of my interview with the great David Griscom. Has a cute title, Country Ain't Right, Wing. Actually, that's just on the thumbnail. The title is something else. Just go check that out and subscribe so you'll be notified when I finally post my tarot reading I did with Rachel Quirky Schenk. That was like another hour-long thing. We did that a while back, but I've been kind of waiting to sort of, once I got this episode out to, generate a little buzz, and then I could direct my sheetheads back to the YouTube channel. It's synergy, okay? I'm a small business owner, a business that makes $14 a month. Okay, I guess that is just an itty-bitty, teeny-weeny pinch of Hoss news, but we're tight on time, so I won't even play the theme here. I'll just say that, actually, did I make a Hoss news theme yet? Oh yeah, I did, but I haven't set like beats and stuff to it. It's just the acapella thing. But I'll just say I got my domain issues worked out. This is very exciting. This is some big Hoss news. Now you definitely can and should and will go to www.hoss.fun for all your Hoss needs. That's right. I'm going to work on not occupying so much time on this show with telling you the infinite expanse and expanding expanse of URLs and social media handles and whatnot that I'm working with. So yeah, there's just too much social media and there are too many social media sites. I'll set a rule for myself. I can only say my social media handles one time per intro, and then I can say the website, hoss.fun or www.hoss.fun. I can say that. We'll say just a couple of times per intro. Just too much social media and too many social media sites. Just go to www.hoss.fun and find all the Hoss places. And I haven't said the individual handles yet, so I'll save that for right before we go into the intro, or right before we go into the interview, rather. I'm so happy with that domain name, though. You should be, too. Enjoy the fact that I have hoss.fun for my central hub. Just enjoy that with me. There's so little to celebrate these days. Also, my new email address is boss@hoss.fun, which is really fun. That just forwards to my Proton Mail account, which you should email me at with secure information about stuff. That's how I try to do the correspondence, other than the Twitter messages that some guests will recognize me from. I do my stuff through Proton Mail, so just in case, if I'm going to get some activists or journalists and stuff who, might want to keep their stuff more secure, I think people feel better when they're corresponding with someone with a Proton Mail account. That's just like super secure email. Okay, and now, with only a tiny bit of further ado, please prepare yourself to fly on wings of justice into another instant classic interview segment of Breadsheet. First, follow my lovely guest on Twitter at I am Rachel Quirky. Check out her podcast, Snark, and the Infinity Podcast. Go to her Twitch channel and follow her and subscribe and watch her fun streams. That's at twitch.tv/Rachel_Quirky. Also, I have a Twitch with very few followers and would love for you to follow me on that. That's at twitch.tv/Hoss_Bossman. Not to steal the thunder out from twitch.tv/Rachel_Quirky. twitch.tv/Rachel_Quirky. I'm figuring out the streaming software and stuff, and I think I'll be able to do a much better GarageBand tutorial on there soon, and want to start doing some things with maybe my girlfriend and I watching some PragerU clips and just making fun of them and pointing out stuff, like some of the political streamers do, because we kind of do that anyway, so why not stream it and see if people want to watch it? So yeah, that's twitch.tv/Hoss_Bossman, Hoss_Bossman on so many things. Okay, I've said that handle. I got to delete one of the times in here me saying twitch.tv now. I'll say Rachel_Quirky on Twitch. You follow her, and I'll repeat that every day of the week. Twitch.tv/Rachel_Quirky. Her Twitch channel is really fun. She was playing this really cool music game the other night. It was watching one of her streams, and very fun hang, very cool. And she was playing, I think it's called Fuser. And as you know from listening to the show, I love making music and will use anything as an excuse to do so. In fact, you're about to hear Rachel Quirky Schenk's original Breadsheet theme song, which I definitely did not have to make, but I love making tunes, and I made a promise, a solemn vow, that from now on I'm going to do an original theme song with fun clips and all that stuff. Okay, so here's my one time. Just give me a mulligan on the thing that I just made that roll up for myself just now. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch at Hoss_Bossman. Zoop. Support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Hoss_Bossman. Download the very first Breadsheet album, The Sounds of Breadsheet, with all the beautiful theme music you know and love from this show at hossbossman.bandcamp.com, no underscore in that. And just go to www.hoss.fun for all your Hoss needs. Now, please welcome back Rachel Quirky Schenk for part 2 of her Breadsheet Odyssey.
Hello, people of the multiverse. I am Rachel Quirky Schenk. Bugs Bunny is definitely a pansexual. Lundo P. It's for dads. That is a LGBTQ plus icon right there. It's for dads. I do the hot goss. Hundo P. I Shank. Like the highest stakes capitalism you can do.
Yeah, I think that actually kind of segues into, we've been going for a little over an hour now. I want to be mindful of your time. Do you have like a hard out at a certain time or anything like that?
My hard out is 6 p.m. So.
Okay. Well, we can go like, maybe like another 20, 30 minutes, something like that.
Yeah,
I usually try to go I was one thing about just what you were just saying there is that, as white, I guess I'd say white, straight, cis dudes, I don't know anything about like Patrick or Scott's like sexuality, I mean, you know that, but like, just as people who at least like visibly are in the ruling demographic, the predominantly represented demographic.
It's so much easier for them to like pass as the main demographic, regardless of how and who they are. Like I also have a very easy time, for I am also white. Like I have the luxury of dyeing my hair brown and having a partner who is assigned male at birth and I'm assigned female at birth. No matter what our gender identity is, like we can hide, we can disguise ourselves in our privilege very easily. And I think that's the way we're trying to get at this. Like we have the luxury of disguising ourselves in our privilege.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, depending on how your different identities that you're regarded as, like how those intersect, like you do have the privilege of just being able to, or, you have to actively seek out many different perspectives and interpretations of things from the, me as a male, as a male appearing person, I guess, have to like really work to think about like, well, how would a female perspective, for instance, like see this situation differently? Because, if you just like are on autopilot, which most people are most of the time, you kind of have to be in many ways, then you do have to like actively seek out those perspectives. And I don't know, I think we've seen like with the more recent this year, BLM protests and stuff, just a lot more like liberals who were not paying attention to a lot of issues starting to kind of wake up to stuff. And it's, the refrain I hear from a lot of like black folks, for instance, is like, hey, you guys are just now learning about this shit. Like we've been talking about this shit for, ever. And you're finally like paying attention now, which is good, but also like don't think we haven't been like trying to bring these issues up to you this whole time.
Yeah, for sure. It also comes up a lot when we're talking about Indigenous people. I've run into a lot of folks still on that bandwagon of like, oh, there's so much to learn, and leaving it at that. It's like, yes, there's a lot to learn, but like you need to study fast and you need to start getting in the fray here, because like you've had all of this time to understand, to know that Indigenous people living on reservations did not do that because they fucking wanted to. Like, oh goody, we get the shittiest parcels of land and we have to stay here. And it's just like, these are things that are so easy for you to find. And I get really frustrated when people are like, oh, I have so much more learning that I have to do. It's like, well, yeah, do your learning, but also like get out there and like help, like put yourself into it, like we can learn as we go. But like, if you're just going to like shut yourself in your library and go, I'm going to read Ibermix Kindi and I'm going to read White Fragility and that's all I'm going to do. It's like, no, read your theory, but do your praxis too. Like do them both. Like, it's not just enough that we like go, oh, we know that this land that I live on was the land of the Lenape, like it's not enough to know that. It's more to be like, and then I will go and I will fight for them wherever they are against climate injustice. Like that's the thing. Like we talk so much about theory and praxis, and they need to be happening at the same time. Like you need to be sure that you are not only like taking your time to learn, but you're also taking your time to act.
And I think that a lot of us maybe who are
Soapbox
yeah
on it
for sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's a big part of what this show is supposed to be all about, so that's good. And that's, I mean, as someone who just loves learning, come from a very academic personally, academic background, I used to teach high school English. So that's one thing you were talking about earlier, is being like someone who I really had to develop my patience with people with fucking dumb opinions, teaching 15-year-olds and developing, like, trying to move people over through the Socratic method and that kind of thing. It's, I don't do it anymore. Big part of that is, I think, because it is just really frustrating and emotionally draining trying to do that all the time. But anyhow, something I've been talking about with people a lot is effective political or socio-political communication. I think we're in a moment, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where that can be where that's like a very useful skill to have. I think a lot of people's ears are open in a way that they're not usually. And so one thing I kind of, maybe we can wrap up talking about, like, I had, the key to effective political or socio-political communication, either through nonfiction or art. And then also, I know I sent you a message saying, like, if you've seen anything, maybe like seen a good YouTube video or piece of fiction or whatever, a good song that maybe you think communicates an interesting philosophical, political, social idea. So there's a whole bunch of stuff I just dumped on you.
Yeah.
And you just pick from whatever comes to mind as to what you kind of like wrap up talking about.
Sure. I think that there are a lot of really wonderful creatives out there, speaking the messaging, who's like really like conveying these ideas that I'm sort of like blasting at you without all the research. Like I'm a big fan of like Thought Slime, Philosophy Tube, ContraPoints, H Bomber Guy. These are the voices that gave me the training wheels to continue the journey. They sort of like again, like I think it's really important to remember that, like, I just got really lucky that one day my partner was watching like ContraPoints videos, about some, I don't even remember what the first one was, but like just it was on, and then like all of a sudden it was like the door opened to the next one and the next one and the next one, and now I'm just like, thinking about, the various bread tubers, and like taking their beautiful pieces and internalizing them and doing my research and sort of like bringing about my way of saying the things. And of course, like, I'm always affected by music. I think that there are so many incredible artists that have been writing songs that like speak to the struggle. I think a lot about Guante, who's just a brilliant spoken word artist and rap artist. Has these incredible pieces, and of course the coup. Like, I don't think you can have any political like musical discussion and not bring up the coup. Like, I live off listening to 5 Million Ways to Kill a CEO. It is like number one a bop. Number two makes me feel so good. It just like, it makes me feel so good to be like, yeah, fuck the bosses. But like, you can go back even further to like our roots, toward artists like Joe Hill or Victor Hara, these voices of a movement through music, like dump the bosses off your backs, and also our predecessors taking religious music and putting progressive lyrics to it, I think is really valuable. Like, there's so much in the creative sphere that is built toward radicalizing, it's like where to begin, like where to truly begin on it. But yeah, I've definitely been influenced by what's the word I'm looking for? People who live at the same time as you.
Contemporaries,
a lot from my contemporaries. But if you ever play the Arlo Guthrie song Victor Hara, and you get to the hook, his hands were gentle, his hands were strong, I'm crying. Like, it's so wild to know that song exists, talking about like imperialist governments doing a coup and like someone who was very important to the movement in Chile being lost because of it. Like this man just wanted to write songs and fight for workers. And then he was like tortured and murdered because the imperialists didn't like Allende, there's just so much. Like you just like go onto Spotify and just like start typing like leftist jams and you will be given such a gift. I recommend the one that has Gritty as the avatar. It's got a bunch of really great bops. But yeah, I think that people, you had this question in your sort of primer about like, is art political? And my answer is everything's political. Like everything you do is political. When you are saying you are apolitical, that is a political choice that you are making. Not participating in something is still a choice. Like not participating in politics is still a political decision.
Yeah.
So like you have to think about how everything that you do or make is saying something, even if you're trying really hard not to say anything. Like,
sure. Yeah. It's like, to say I'm apolitical is you're just basically saying you are political. It's just that you support or are fine with the status quo.
Yeah. Whatever is on top of the wheel is fine by me. And that's, and you think about the BLM movement line, white silence is violence. Like that's exactly, or the phrase, the best way for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. Like you have to think about that. Like when you are choosing to like keep it PC or keep it out of like, don't talk about religion or politics. Like, yes, they're very uncomfortable subjects, but like they're the subjects that lead to the quality of life that we have.
Absolutely.
I think nothing is more counter-revolutionary than going, I don't want to talk about politics. I just like, it's uncomfortable and it'll make people mad. And I'm just over here being like, hey, remember how Thanksgiving sucks for like the Indigenous people? Remember how it sucks for them? Like, I know that's uncomfortable, Grandma, but here we are, like celebrating genocide. Good fucking job, and again, like I will always say the thing that is like jarring and a lot, because I think you need that push. Like someone needs to be like, what? No, what? And then like, but wait, because I'd rather take it too far and have someone like meet me in that middle ground, because people love compromising. They love it so much. So I'm like, I'm going to go as far over here as I can. I'm gonna holler at you and you're gonna have to step closer to hear me. And that's kind of the motion of it. And I think that's also the motion of political creators, our YouTubers and our musicians who are like speaking the message, and you kind of have to like lean in closer to get it. And I think like that lean in closer is so vital and so important. And again, that's why I won't debate people, because I'm like, I just want you to lean in closer. All I want you to do is imagine a world without capitalism. That is literally the end of my mission. Like the moment you start imagining it, I think is the moment that you're going to go, oh yeah, this system sucks. Sucks so bad. Like just imagine it. Just imagine like, how would you run a world that isn't built on the idea of exploiting people or creating a scaremongering tactic through state violence or homelessness or starvation? What just imagine it. Just like think about it for a second. What if every empty home had someone living in it? What if every resource that we had was shared, and there weren't rich countries and poor countries? I don't want to say like I'm John Lennon, but it's just like John Lennon sucked, but like that's it. Like just start playing in that space of what would a society without police look like? How would I build that? Well, what would I do? How would we do this? Because like, I think us as leftists, it's really hard because we don't have the answers. We don't have a roadmap. I don't want to call them our opposition, but those who choose to be apolitical or follow whatever the status quo is have all of this like information and all of this stuff that's already happened. It's fine enough, that sort of like, well, I'm not struggling, so it's fine enough. Like,
And yeah, it's like I've been recommending this video, this one YouTuber who makes me feel very old. Her name is Vicky 1999 because she was born in 1999, which is crazy. But she has these really super smart, has these really awesome, informative videos. And one of them is called the Cold War from the Soviet POV. And there's a big disclaimer at the beginning of it. Of course, this does not stop people from saying that she's like, being engaging in apologia for Stalin or whatever. But, there's a big thing is just like all of this information is true. This is literal like historical information, but it's just biased. And it really kind of shows how just through you don't even have to lie or even really misrepresent things. Just careful omission and inclusion of facts can give you a very different narrative. And what you said there about like not having a roadmap, I think that what little I have learned about the Soviet Union over in recent years has really kind of shown me that it's like the Soviet Union wasn't really a completely failed experiment. Some of the things they did are like either even the failures and stuff are things that we can learn from. It's just that we are completely blacked out of anything positive because it's all filtered through their biggest enemy in a war that lasted 50 years. So how could it not be completely biased?
And not to mention the material harms that were done to communists here in the States, like the very anti-communist sentiment that lasted and still lasts, like I will say I'm an anarcho-communist because some people are very uncomfortable by the word communist or communism. And I would rather just like say it, like sometimes I do like to like say like I'm a leftist, like because that's a little more palatable, but like here I'm an anarcho-communist. Like I think that there are many great things about like communal living and direct democracy and owning the means of production, but so many of like the standards that are held up by anti-communism are authoritarian, like we're denied so much nuance when we're talking about socialist or communist states, like like Cuba, for instance, like, yes, it is not great that Castro was the be all end all decision maker, but we could still see what worked and what doesn't and take what works. Like that's the cool thing about being a person who thinks about things. You can go, that was neat, that was bad, edit that, keep that, let's move forward, Absolutely. Yeah, it's from what I know about Cuba and the Soviet Union for much of its history, obviously fucking horrible thing. That's what I always have to give the disclaimer, not engaging in apologia. Stalin was a fucking piece of shit, but that's that is just one part of their history. There were many attempts to try and like improve life there. And I think that like in, what I understand about Cuba as well, it's like, yeah, the ceiling maybe isn't as high as it is for like prosperity in some place like the United States. Yeah, but also you have to think about literal trade embargoes by the more powerful, more wealthy country.
Absolutely.
To make this country less prosperous,
yes.
Like
and
most communist collectives or socialist things that don't survive are directly not surviving because of imperialist capitalist intervention. Like
absolutely, yeah. And there's something to be said for in America, in Cuba, the floor is a lot higher as far as like prosperity goes than it is in America. I mean, in the United States, there is no bottom really. Like you could just be like, I just saw this was like a 10-year-old video on YouTube. Like somebody interviewed a dude and my girlfriend used to work at the Georgia Law Center for the Homeless. So she could tell you a million stories like this. That this guy, there's just like an interview with some guy, just like random white dude, just looked like a regular guy, and he had just gotten stranded in Las Vegas, and he had been living home as a homeless person for 8 months, or unhoused, I guess, for better terminology. But all that happened was somebody stole his backpack and he was just fucked. Like he's just stranded there forever, you know, or I don't know what became of him, but you know, and there's a ton of stories like that my girlfriend could tell you, like I said, that are just like some of these people, like they just got scammed by some company that was like gave them a truck driving job, and then like the company mysteriously disappeared once they got here and like ran out of gas and didn't have any money to get back. So now they're just homeless in Atlanta until for the foreseeable future. And it's like that type of thing can't happen in some countries, and it can happen here, and that's a fucking problem. Can we at least look at what they did to stop that type of thing from happening? Yeah,
it's staggering to me that we are still looking at an unhoused population when we have more homes than unhoused. You know, it's again, people say this all the time. Like, this is a product of the system working as intended. Like, we are supposed to have an unhoused population to be the reminder of what happens if you don't stay in line, if you don't keep going to your job, if you don't let capitalists exploit you. Like, that is what will happen to you. Like, it is using human suffering as a weapon against dissension, you know, against trying to fight for something better, because it's like the moment that you unsubscribe from this is the moment that you lose everything. You lose housing, you lose healthcare, you lose food, you lose parts of your hierarchy of needs if you do not follow the rules. Like, that's what the unhoused are for. That is their function in this system, to keep you scared from fighting back and breaking the system that is letting people die unhoused. And my understanding from where I stand is, how are you going to convince people to work for less than they're worth if you don't have a punishment? Because that's the thing. America is like all about punishment. They love punishment. Sure. And that's why it is so hard to like decolonize people from thinking of the unhoused as undeserving. Like, there must be a reason that you do not have a house, you do not have shelter. There must be a reason. It must be a deficiency in you. But I want everyone to remember that it is a deficiency in the state. Like, it is part of what keeps people scared and keeps them in line, because nobody wants to be homeless or without insurance or without food, you know? And so it's a lot easier to keep everyone nervous about that, you know? Yeah, I wonder if this is what that just reminded me of, which I know I've heard other people echo that, and I was just wondering, does that come from somewhere specific? Because there's a George Carlin line, which like I just used to be a huge George Carlin fanatic, still love his work, but you know, it's just I've gone through all of it a million times. But and obviously there's no new stuff coming out, but he had this line about like this is my theory on class in America. The upper class pays none of the taxes, does none of the work. The middle class does all of the work, pays all of the taxes, and the poor are just there to scare the shit out of the middle class. And, you know, which is essentially what you were just saying. And I was wondering, like, did George Carlin just like kind of surmise that? But, you know, and it is like really a pretty logical. We live in a caste system. Like, sure. This isn't freedom. This is a class system that propagates some people to the top, so you can aspire to something and then fear the thing that could happen if you don't continue to push yourself and be productive and work as hard as you can. Like, productivity has been going up and up and up and up and up and up and up in the past decades. Pay has stagnated. Like, there's enough keeping people afraid of the worst case scenario that like we're not pushing back, you know, like, and we're a product of a lot of different variables, like the Red Scare, the AIDS crisis, the war on drugs. So many voices that could have spoken to these material problems are lost to us because our state failed them or targeted them specifically because they could have shifted the status quo. Like, think about our boomer population. Like, our boomer population does not have as many like LGBTQ plus humans or indigenous or BIPOC folks within the ranks because of the failure of addressing the AIDS crisis because we were so focused on this is punishment for debauchery. This is the gays getting what they deserve, quote unquote, or the war on drugs being a way to target inner cities, urban communities, people of color, like we've had all these machinations. The Red Scare, we lost a lot of communists through that, whether real communists or not, like there was definitely a shift when it was like, no, we will not party with communism at all. It is evil. It is deadly. It is all of these terrible things. So like we have so much stacked against us through the decades. Again, like we don't have a roadmap because a lot of our leaders were lost to us before they could even lead. You think about Fred Hampton, even, this leader who was reaching out and getting recognition even by like liberals. Like people were listening to Fred Hampton, and he was murdered in his bed by the state.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
no, there's and tons of like examples like that of either like people who were killed or people who just had to go into hiding because it's like, well, I don't want to put myself or my family at risk. We talk about North Korea being like somebody, this authoritarian state, which obviously it is, but like, talk about other states from the past as being that way. People just are not conditioned to see that exact same type of thing, maybe with a nicer face on it. It's more normalized, but that exact same of like oppression of ideas, it has a proud tradition in the United States, and it's hard to get people to see it sometimes, I think. And, something you touched on earlier, and then I guess this will be, we'll kind of wrap up here.
Cool. Sorry, I could talk forever about the infinite connections between like our history and today, and like how stuff was sort of like built out of these what feel like insular moments, like even when you just look at who our older generations are and how so many LGBTQ plus people are not among them.
Sure. Yeah. I've never even thought about that, though, that, it's like obviously a lot of them literally just died from the AIDS crisis. Yeah. I mean,
we're left to die. Not just died. We're ignored and left to die because their way of life was seen as less than. Their truth was seen as wrong somehow. And that's not our ancient history. That happened within our living memory, you and me sitting here.
Sure. Yeah. No. And I mean, I just like this. I keep bringing up Chriscroft, and he's like, I think in his late 40s, early 50s. And that was like his big aha moment had to do with like, this story that he told was basically just like, I said to somebody, somebody said something about gay people. And I was like, oh, yeah, gay people. It started the AIDS crisis. And they were like, no, honey, let me just explain to you the reality. And then he's like, in that moment, I just realized like, I don't know shit about anything. Like I have these vague ideas that give me attitudes about stuff that I don't fucking anything about. And like, it was a really beautiful anecdote because it's like that, something like that, something so minor, somebody showing a little bit of compassion and just willing to give you the right information can make a huge difference, depending on how far gone you are, I guess. But obviously we shouldn't tolerate intolerance or anything like that. I mean, I know like there's kind of a fine line there when I talk about this kind of thing. Like we need to be empathetic I just think that some people, I had a long chat with a dude who was knocking on doors. I shouldn't have taken up so much of his time, but he was a guy from the DSA trying to get people to get out the vote for down in Georgia here, Ossoff and Warnock. The spotlight is on us at the moment. So, I really need to be getting out there. Speaking of praxis, getting out there and just like, yeah, I know even Warnock, Ossoff sucks in a lot of ways. And even Warnock is not nearly as far left as I'd like him to be. But, that community that he is a leader of is like responsible for much of the great progressive stuff that we've been able to inch by with in the Atlanta area, because obviously there's a very proud that church. He's the preacher at Martin Luther King's church, so there's a proud tradition of progressive activism from the Black community around here. But obviously, hopefully that's about to be taken mainstream with him to some degree or another. But anyway, I talked to this guy for a long time yesterday about he was, talking about how he's knocking on doors, and that experience of like just, hey, maybe we don't see eye to eye on some of these cultural issues, quote unquote cultural issues, but don't you like want a check from the government until this pandemic is over? Like, just appealing to people's, like, with, I think a lot of leftist theory is about that, just appealing to people's material interests. And it's like, yeah, we might not be able to get them on the cultural issues right away, but I think that once they sort of, get correct information, then maybe we'll at least be able to get them on our side close enough to. One thing that I'm thinking about, like when I start knocking on doors for Warnock and Ossoff, is just appealing to the basic idea of like, people hate Congress because it's always gridlocked and they don't get anything done. The fucking reason for that is Republicans. If at least we could try to get something done if we didn't have them blocking every goddamn thing that was trying to be done. But I mean, that's me on my soapbox, and just an idea I was thinking about, like maybe I can appeal to these like conservative leaning people's sense of like Washington doesn't do anything. It's like, explain to them the reason that actually is.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think I find it incredibly fascinating to bring that to a literal thing that just happened in this last election. Like, we are still living in the consequences of somebody who wanted to make money off paper demonizing cannabis. Like, we are living in the consequences of that monetary decision. And I find it so interesting that every single ballot that had decriminalization, legalization, medical excuses for cannabis use got passed. I think that we are looking at ideas that I think people can get behind. And I'm gonna like shout the spooky thing. Like, I'm going to shout the spooky thing over here. That's what I'm going to do. But like, reaching out to people based on like what materially can change for them is such a good strategy as well. And we should like utilize everyone that we have, like that idea of like, wouldn't you love it if you didn't have to be employed to see a doctor? Like, wouldn't that be great if like you didn't have to worry that if your job dries up or if your industry dries up or if there's another like nationwide disease, you don't have to worry about losing your house because you need medicine. Wouldn't that just be great? And I think that is such a good way to get at it. I think like we talk about leading with empathy a bunch, but I think we can take it to the next level. I think we can lead with solidarity, with like, I'm looking out for you. I'm thinking about a really great YouTuber, that Dang Dad. I don't know if you're familiar, but he that Dang Dad used to be a police officer and has a really like heart-wrenching, like gut-shaking piece about the process that you go through as an officer to dehumanize people, like how it is sort of written into your training, into your day-to-day experience. And at the end, where he's sort of like brabbing, I'm sorry, I don't know that Dang Dad's pronouns. I'm sorry if I didn't want to assume, but that Dang Dad brings it to a head with talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and these sort of like anti-cop initiatives. And it's like, we're marching for you. Like, you may think that we are completely off base and disgusting and anti-state, which I am very much, but like, at the end of the day, like, despite how I feel about the state, I don't think that they should be allowed to march into your home and murder you. I don't think that is good. No matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what your income bracket is, I don't want them to be able to get away with it. I don't want that for you. I'm marching against the police so you can be safe, so you can be secure, so you can live in your home and sleep in your bed. That is why we are here. For you. I think that is a great way to frame it. And I think that, yeah, we need to be more willing to set aside some of the things we might disagree on and just like express to people, like, this is literally just for people below a
a certain income bracket that is just obscenely high that you are and I are never going to get to. We're trying to look out for all of those people, which, you know, includes and will probably always include you and me. So, yeah, there's a couple of recommendations since, you know, we're talking kind of in the YouTube zone. There's one that I want to mention now. I'll probably remember to mention this dude in some of the, and also I don't know their pronouns either. When I'm unfamiliar with that element, I try to use they and them. Just be neutral. English sucks, but for having
it's hard. And I apologize if I was speaking out of turn with that dang dad. I also try to do the same thing, but I was getting like really hype about what they had to say. Well,
as someone who has, you know, I am everything's a spectrum, but, you know, I think by society's standards, I am, for all intents and purposes, you know, fully identify as like male and don't have really any kind of like, I think I would, if I did have questions about that personally, I think I would have, would know that by now. I know that I was a very sensitive kid and that I was always made fun of for being gay, as most young boys are who are like, you know, below a certain level of like
machismo.
Yeah. And or just weird in any way, I guess. But yeah, that's just the way. Fortunately, that's one thing that teaching high school in like 2015, 2016 that I really saw had changed a lot since I was in high school in the early 2000s was that like there's a lot more kids they are so much fucking better. This younger generation about, you know, they say some dumb shit and they have some really dumb opinions, but they are so much better about things like that, being more accepting of like, and not being so quick to judge people and being more accepting of like different modes of being or whatever. That's, you know, you said normalizing leftist as a term. I think, you know, normalizing, it's like, obviously I, as a cisgender male who identifies that way and don't have any like sort of questions about that or anything, like it, people can just assume they can call me he, they always do, and that's I don't even think about that, but like, you know, that's something I don't have to think about. And so it's important to take other people's experiences into consideration. And just the idea of that's something that, you know, I didn't really understand when I first saw it on Twitter, when people would always on the left would put he, him in their bio, or, you know, their pronouns in their bio. And I came to realize like, oh, this is just a way of normalizing this. It's like most of us don't have to worry about this, but, you know, that's not the case for some people. And it's just a considerate, nice thing to do, which is like,
it's just
about anyway.
It's saying that your identity is recognized and safe here.
Sure.
You know, like it is like cisgendered folk, we're not always going to get it right. And not that I'm figuring it out. I'm fine to say that like, I'm gender fucked. I don't know. I don't know what I know. And I'm fine knowing that I don't know. But like when you take the time to just do that little something of like, these are my pronouns. You make it a safer space for someone to announce pronouns that are not the status quo. You make it safe for them to exist.
Sure.
You make it acceptable for their being who they are. And if you've got issue with that and you've got umbrage with making people who are on the fringes feel a little less alone, like you've got some problems that you need to work on in your soul. Like,
absolutely.
If you believe a soul exists, you got to do the work. Friendo, pally-wow.
Okay, I always fucking do this. I lose track of what I'm talking about because I'm a very tangential person, but that's just how my brain works. The reason I brought all this stuff up for some reason. Dissident theory is this thing I discovered recently I put like a call out on the BreadTube subreddit that like, hey, I do shout outs to people on my podcast. It's still pretty small, but hey, if you want to like have a YouTube channel or something you want to promote, that's how I found out about this. And so I'm sure I'll remember to shout them out. But it's if you're like me and don't have a lot of patience for like really dense theory, which I read the Communist Manifesto when I was a teenager, but like I really need to reread it. But that's a pretty short text. Capital, I'm never going to get around to actually reading that. Maybe I'll listen to it on audiobook, but I will be tuning out like 75% of it probably as my mind wanders. But there's this channel called Dissident Theory that is a chapter by chapter breakdown of Capital that, they just started doing it and there are a few chapters in now. And this person is very, very good at just like making it approachable and interesting and breaking it down in a good way. So if you're like me and you don't want to read a really long, boring book or just have too much other stuff you want to get to before that, that's a good resource. And I want to give them a proper plug also and recommend it to you.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I'll check them out. I also lean a lot on the Radical Reviewer. They sort of break down books too. Also, they use their dog as their avatar. So it's just this dog sitting on a chair, just like sitting there looking at the camera. And the voiceover is like, we're going to talk about the conquest of bread. And it's great. And I love that doggo. It's a very good doggo.
I'll definitely check that out. My de facto mascot for everything I do is my dog Fancy, because I started out, I'm a musician, like that's my main art form that I've always been doing since I was a teenager. But like I started off making these like dumb style parodies and just like stupid little songs that I just had a huge store of, and I was like, I'll start a YouTube channel and post these up, but I guess I need some kind of visual with them, and I just had a camera roll full of cute videos of my dog, so I was just like, just pair those up, and now I just use her in the artwork, and she's just like in every part of it. And I think that people have kind of come to really love to see what Fancy's up to in the intervening days between releases.
That's like champion for me. His unofficial nickname is the People's Kitty.
Well, that's a beautiful I guess talking about animals and our love for them, would be a beautiful note to end on. But I did have one more little thing I wanted to. Why do you think it is? And this is something, if you don't really, you just maybe say a thing or two about it. But a question that I've been toying with, and I've seen a couple of good YouTubers, Thought Slime had one recently, and a couple of other people, about like why conservatives suck at comedy. And there's I think some good thoughts out there on this. I have my own little theories, but I've talked about them on the show before. Why do you think it is that people on the left or people, artistic folks and people who make good art, and just people who seem to have any aesthetic sense at all, always seem to be left of center? And then conservatives are just not good at making art often, not always, obviously. I don't want to speak in complete generalities, but why do you think that dichotomy seems to exist?
Ooh, that is such a good question, and is one that I don't think about enough. Yeah, I'm trying to sort of like parse it in my head, because like, how an answer is a feeling, like I know the answer because it's like one shade of like magenta, and like, how do you explain that shade of magenta to someone?
That is very much your artistic, creative soul.
Like it's a feeling. And obviously I can only speak from my experiences. But I think it is a lot to do with the creative field and the body, the material self. Like we as creatives look at our material selves, our flesh, our bones, our voices, our fingers, as these conduits for our humanity. They represent our legacies and ourselves. You think about how hard dancers work on their material selves, how much singers work to build out a voice for singing, or a voice for oration, or a voice for impression. And we are so connected to our material self that I think it is very easy for us to slide into what is materially beneficial to me. And also because we as material beings, using our flesh and our bones and our voices to make things, we are so the victim of the commodification of that. You think about movie sets that were unsafe for cast and crew. You think about how we physically have to be in the space to do the art that we make. Like, we have to be there in our flesh. You know, it's a little different with social distancing and like the power of video conference and YouTube and Vimeo and all of that. But even when you're making a video, you are using your material self to do it. And we also, as artists, find love in collaboration. Like, you and I are sitting here having a conversation, like we are collaborating, making something out of nothing. And I think because we are so connected to our bodies, to the ideas of collaboration, it is very natural for us to lean into what is materially best for people, or what is good for a collective. When we work together to make a play, we are working together to make a play. We're not sitting in ourselves. We have to be physically, mentally, emotionally open and understand ourselves from like the top of our head to the tips of our toes as our instrument, as our conduit, as our source of making something from nothing. And I think that's why. I think that's absolutely the reason why, for we are our bodies in a way that other industries maybe aren't so much. And I think that when we are exploited, we feel it the most, because our exploitation is connected to our very bodies, our very beings.
And that is a fascinating and beautiful answer. That's it seems like a little bit more, my sort of just cliff notes on my take on this is that I've been actually looking for something just like that, something a little bit more, because I've been thinking about trying to make a video or just talk about this more on the show or something, about how it's just kind of interesting to me that something you mentioned earlier, this imagination. That we have to, as leftists, we don't have a roadmap, and our ideas have to be like, we have to appeal to the imagination just by default a lot more than people with other ideas do. And that, I think, is a big part of why artists are important to the left. It's like helping to, that's a big thing that art does, is help to cultivate the imagination. And also empathy, as you kind of touched on there. And like that, I think that's a very interesting thought on where that sense of imagination and that sense of empathy come from, as opposed to just being like, oh yeah, my imagination is just better than theirs or something like that. Like, I think there's a little bit more to it. And I've been kind of searching for that. And that was like really, really good. I'll let you know if I decide to do this, but I might want to like use a clip from that if I, decide to do like an essay on it or something like that.
Sure. I pulled that shade of magenta right out of my ass. So,
and the way that you identified, it's just so funny that like you started talking about how you were feeling a color or something, and it's like, that is such an artsy way of approaching this question.
It was the best way to like describe, like, I have a notion and a feeling and sort of like that gut response, but like no one has asked me to put it into words yet. And so like that, those were the words.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that was beautiful.
I reserve the right to change my mind on it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. We on Breadsheet, we always respect that, and we encourage it, in fact. That idea about that's something definitely I'm going to be thinking about now, and trying to maybe explore more. And if you ever want to come back on again, I'm trying to cycle through, and something that I have noticed with my first few guests is I have had a lot of just like white dudes on the show, so I'm trying to just get more people. Like, I have a long list of people I'm interested in, and I'm moving the just LGBTQ and the women and the people, trying to just like spread it out so it's not just like a big parade of one perspective on the show. So I'm kind of like cycling through, and I would love to have you back on. I think this was a lovely discussion. I think my listeners are going to absolutely love every bit of this, and I don't think I'll have to like edit much out or anything like that. So thank you so much for coming on. Could you do your pluggables? And if you forget anything, you can let me know and I'll insert them in later.
Yeah. I have two podcasts, Screen Snark and the Infinity Podcast. Please listen to them if you like podcasts about movies and TV and me shouting that capitalism is bad occasionally. And if you like video games and streaming, I'm a brand new Twitch affiliate. You can find me on twitch.tv/Rachel_Quirky. And if you don't like that form of social media, you can find me on the rest of them at I am Rachel Quirky on Instagram and Twitter. Watch me have emotional breakdowns on Twitter about how bad my job is sometimes, and then also my cat. Emotions and cat. That's what you get. That's what you're subscribing to.
I mean, I love those things, and I know a lot of people who love those things. They get a lot of emotion and dog from my stuff, so it's a natural fit. And I could definitely echo. Obviously, wanting to have you on the show to begin with. I'm just a fan of your work. I have not checked out your Twitch channel yet, though, so I'm gonna subscribe to that right after this. I didn't.
We play Fire Emblem Path of Radiance every Monday, and then occasional Wednesdays we'll play Jackbox with the chat. And we just did yesterday our first stream of Fuser, which we might continue to do on weekend nights.
My audience, I know that the whole Twitch thing is something that when people first hear about it, that I know when I first heard 10 years ago or whatever it was, when it's like, yeah, my little brother likes watching people play video games on the internet. I'm like, what the fuck? Why does he do that? Then of course you actually see it and understand. It's like, oh, it's a hang. It's just like they're just talking over. It's just, the video game is basically just something to look at. So
yeah, the video game's just there to be experienced together, and it's the thing that we can share, because it is really difficult to fire up Twitch and play a movie for people.
Sure.
These are our digital colloquies, our video game streams at this point,
And I'll be, we'll definitely be checking that out. And so that's, I am Rachel Quirky on Twitter and Instagram. And was it just on Twitch? Is it Rachel_Quirky?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining me here today. And
thank you.
I'll let you know. Yes, this was a very delightful conversation. And I will let you know when this is up. Should be a couple of weeks.
Love it. Thank you. And hey, y'all out there listening, do me a favor. Take a deep breath in. Hold it. Let it out. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
Thank you so much, Rachel Quirky Schenk. Have a wonderful Sunday, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Hello, people of the multiverse. I am Rachel Quirky Schenk. Bugs Bunny is definitely a pansexual. Undo P. It's for dads. That is a LGBTQ plus icon right there. It's for dads. It's for dads. I do the hot goss. Hundo P. I am Rachel Quirky Schenk. For dads. Bunny is definitely a pansexual. For dads. Bugs Bunny is definitely a pansexual. Disgusting corporate cash grab. I am Rachel Quirky Schenk.
Wowzers McDuffie. Wasn't that just something else? Thank you so much for joining me for this pre-Christmas edition of Breadsheet. And if you liked it, or even if you thought it was just okay, or even if you hated it, I'm a nice guy. Come on, help me out here. Please rate and review and share the podcast. It really does help a lot. This was the last interview episode of the year 2020. Best year God ever laid his big, strong hands upon. But it's not the last episode of the year. Come back next week for an extra delicious, extra delirious post-Christmas mini-sode of Breadsheet, where Hoss will recommend things, Hoss will play some music, and it'll just be the best way to wrap up this historic year. Big things coming in 2021, hopefully big good things. Have a few interviews scheduled for early January that you're just absolutely going to love. The return of Ben Burgess, the great Robbie Martin of Media Roots Radio is going to be a first-timer on Breadsheet. A friend of mine named Lloyd, who is also a DJ, is going to talk all kinds of out there shit with me. And it's just going to be a magical year. But again, that'll be after the amazing end-of-year mini-sode I'll be dropping before this year rounds out, which I'll have some choice nugs, going to play some awesome electronic music my friend Mark made. The music that I make is like silly, goofy stuff. The stuff he makes is like actual knows how to use like programs and equipment and shit. And some old stuff that Stacy and I made that I mentioned before. That's Craig Smith and Craig, Attorneys at Law, I believe was the name of that podcast pilot we made. And I believe by then I'll be ready to announce a very exciting new project with just some of the best gabbers in the biz. We're going to be joining forces and doing something that's going to be just so wild and out. And I'll give you a hint what it's going to be. Poopton. That's going to do it for me. Again, Rachel Schenk is at I am Rachel Quirky on Twitter. She is Rachel_Quirky on Twitch or twitch.tv/Rachel_Quirky. She has 2 podcasts, Screen Snark and the Infinity Podcast, both of which you should subscribe to and listen to because they rule. I am at Hoss_Bossman on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. You should purchase Sounds of Breadsheet at hossbossman.bandcamp.com. That's with no underscore. And support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Hoss_Bossman. Just go to www.hoss.fun, bookmark it, visit it every day, explore my wide reach on the web, and of course, as always, be a good neighbor, be a great lover, and most importantly, be one with the infinite cosmos. Now, stick around for the K-Max's one and only Christmas song, A Very Unfortunate Christmas. Love ya. Mwah. Kisses.
Now that the credit market's gone to shit, even our friend St. Nick has taken a hit. So open your eyes, Virginia, and take a look around. Everybody's struggling, you know shit is going down. It's going down. Harder times are just around the bend. No way out for our altruistic Pondy friend. You know that sometimes even legends take out loans. So he petitioned Congress to throw him a bone. But he should have known his chance at pity go away. Arriving at his hearing on a private sleigh, a private sleigh. I mean, seriously, what a stupid thing to do. There's no way anybody's getting Christmas shoes. Christmas Eve for little Mylanta. Her spirit soared when she heard evidence of Santa. But his crimson suit was hardly all that glistened red. For on the wall Mylanta saw the former contents of his head. Of his head. Oh my fucking shit! Damn it, I fucked up.
Also, I'm just going to read this sentence real quick and maybe I'll insert it somewhere. I don't know. I was trying to make a grammar point with Katie, and so I made up this sentence. The poop man said, I'll never be at Poopton Heights, citing his butt's juiciness as a reason he might persist.
Breadsheet.